Hello, I am James Hanley, and this will be my presentation for New Media, Language and Globalization. I will be comparing intermediality between news outlets and social media, and my case study will be surrounding the Northern Ireland Census in 2022 and 2012. So to begin, I will have some background context to the situation. Northern Ireland is a country historically divided politically and religiously. The Catholic population has been associated with the nationalist section in relation to the Republic of Ireland, while the Protestant or other types of Christianity, such as Presbyterian, have been associated with the Unionist population in terms of the United Kingdom. There has been tensions between the two groups in a time that was known as the Troubles. Traditionally, the Protestant population has held a majority in Northern Ireland. This has been present in the decennial census, which can be observed on the map on the right-hand side of the screen. Northern Ireland has achieved political stability recently, and its devolved government has now focused on tackling public policy with issues neglected during periods of the sectarian violence. But also, there is a lack of significant growth in the integrated sector, and churches are able to exert their control to protect a singular identity. In the 2021 census, there was a Catholic majority in the country for the first time in its history. This spurred debate online and subsequent news articles. Next, I would like to look at aims and objectives of my presentation. Firstly, I will look at intermediacy, which is the interconnectedness of old and new media in relation to the political and social event. And I'll delve into how different types of journalism can complement and compete with each other. It'll also be interesting to see how social media reactions affect online news articles and shape their stories and how they're published in the later weeks. Next, I would like to look at nationalism and culture in media. I would like to see if there is any difference in the coverage of the story between the Republic of Ireland and the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland. It will be interesting to see if the question of Irish nationalism is spoken about in these articles, and if there is a similar response in English media outlets that cover the story. Lastly, I would like to make the comparison between different years. I would like to see if there's a difference in the social media reaction and the media coverage of the census in the 10 years between the 2011 and 2021 censuses. Next, I would like to show you the methods of research that I used in my presentation. The first website tool I used was Census UK. I began with the search term Northern Ireland Census, and then to filter it down, I began looking at articles that were only published within a month of the reports coming out in both 2022 and 2012. I also filtered the location by firstly looking at European articles, and then the Ireland and United Kingdom and Northern Ireland. I only looked at newspapers and web-based publications, and then I used my own interpretation to only look at relevant articles that discuss this topic. Next, I used Twitter. In an advanced search, I started with keywords such as Catholic, Protestant, and Northern Ireland. I then filtered that as well for only the month after the report came out, both in 2012 and 2022. I also decided to use some relevant hashtags, such as hashtag Northern Ireland, hashtag Census 2021, hashtag Census 2022, and hashtag Census NI. And then also I used some secondary readings to gain further understanding of this topic. The first one I used was the contribution of shared education to Catholic-Protestant reconciliation in Northern Ireland, a third way. And the next one I used was social media and religion, missiological perspective on the link between Facebook and the emergence of prophetic churches in South Africa. Now, using those filters, I found these findings. Beginning in 2022, using Census UK, I was able to filter down the articles to find a total of 315 within the month in that location. 115 were from the Republic of Ireland, while 200 were from the UK and Northern Ireland. To filter this down again to see if we were only looking at articles that discussed social media, I used keywords such as tweet, Twitter, and social media. You can see the results here. Both Ireland and UK had similar numbers in comparison to the amount of articles they had made. Next, I decided to see if there was a question of nationalism in any of the articles. As you can see, Ireland and the UK actually responded equally to the amount of articles that they did. And also, most of their articles contained official tweets. These are tweets that concerned politicians or members of organizations. Then I would like to compare this to the Twitter at the time. So after reading all the tweets, I deciphered myself if the user had identified themselves in the tweet as a Catholic, as a Protestant, or if they said they were atheist or did not identify a religion. The majority did not identify, but there was also a decent amount that had openly stated that they were Catholic, while Protestants had remained silent in this amount of time. This majority response from Catholic users could be something in terms of what Ngatla said, how the role of social media in the development of religious values, and there's an improvement of social values, and especially how there's a gratification among users towards faith-based content. Next, I looked at nationalism, and there was a decent amount of respondents that had made links to nationalism with Ireland or brought up British citizenship. I also like to compare to see if there was any links to articles by any of the people making tweets, as another form of intermediacy. And I also thought it'd be interesting to see how many people would make light of the situation. I also looked at filtered the searches by using no hashtags, which resolved in a lot more answers. And as you can see, there's still there's more Catholic responses to Protestant responses, while most people do not identify their religion. There is still a large amount that make a link to an article, and there is also a large amount that bring up the question of nationalism as well, while there is a few that also make light of the situation. Here are some examples of the information that I found. The top left and the bottom left show examples of news articles that I found on Nexus UK and how they spoke about social media. The top right is an example of a joke tweet that was made, and the bottom right shows how some people stayed neutral on the topic but also broached the topic of nationalism in their comment sections or continuing a thread. Next, we can compare them to the findings of 2012. Firstly, as you can see, after filtering it down, there was a lot less articles, but at the time, Protestant was still the majority, so it wasn't considered a newsworthy topic for some. As you can see, by using the keywords Twitter, tweet, and social media, a lot less of these articles had used public reactions in that way. While due to there being a Protestant majority, nationalism wasn't spoken about as much, and none of them had used official tweets if they had made any reference to it. Next, to compare that to Twitter, there was a lot less tweets about it as well at the time, but still there was a majority that did not identify their religion, while Catholics and Protestants made a similar response, even though it wasn't a lot. There was still a few joke tweets, and there was a few links to articles in the tweets as well. Now here are some examples from the 2012 results. As you can see, social media is not a main factor in these articles, and official tweets were not used as often. And also on Twitter, there was less conversation started and there was less relevant hashtags used. So the main points that I found from these findings. Firstly, there is an increased relevance of social media and how there's changes to Twitter discussions. There is an increase in the use of social media in mainstream media stories, and also vice versa, there is an increase in mainstream articles being shared effectively on social media. This has its positives and negative effects. To speak on Ngatla, she spoke about how there's a sense of exaggeration on Facebook, whereby one testimony can be duplicated to look like there's many testimonies, and how articles can be reshared to make it look like there's a greater number believing the opinion. Next, there's development of community spirit on social media. Technology can enhance religious practices through the expansion and creation of religious communities. There was more Catholic responses than Protestant responses, as they were joining in a someone's called victory, and there's a sense of community that has developed online between users in both terms of religion and in terms of nationalism. Lastly, it was interesting to see that there was no biases apparent between countries. There was no major difference in the news coverage between Irish media outlets and UK and Northern Irish outlets. Both broached the topic of nationalism evenly, and they showed a common dependency on social media. And official sources were used in most instances instead of using public reactions. Now, to conclude this presentation on intermediacy, it is clear that there's an important growth in intermediacy. Social media has grown into a powerful tool that other forms of media are beginning to utilize fully. There has been a growth in the process over the last 10 years, clearly from the data shown. This could have multiple reasons. It is the easiest way to get public reaction. It's a faster way for commentators to speak their minds. There's a connection between old and new media, and there is ways that they complement each other in terms of fair news storytelling. The importance of social media is a type of reporting that will continue to grow. If there was to be further research, it would be interesting to look at investigating the ownership of each of the media outlets that covered the census report. I would also have a closer look at the locations of the publications, and I could even broaden the filter to look at America and the rest of Europe. I could compile the data on the political allegiances of the tweet quoted in the article. And lastly, I could create a list of the most commonly tweeted words around the topic and investigate their meaning. But thoroughly, I am very happy with my investigation. So, I would like to thank you for listening, and here is a list of the references that I used in making this presentation.